channel open. Welcome back to WeeklyTrek, a proud member of the Tricorder Transmissions podcast network and presented in partnership with TrekCore.com. I am your host, Alex Perry.
What's today's date? The date.
Today's show was recorded on January 4th, 2023, and is current through Star Trek Prodigy Season 1, so beware of spoilers. All right, let's get into the show.
Good day, Voyager, and welcome to A Briefing with Neelix. It's a catchy title, isn't it?
WeeklyTrek is a regular news show covering the biggest stories from the Star Trek franchise. We are in a new golden age of Star Trek. There are 5 television shows in production, possibly more on the way, and enough merchandise to fill the Bajoran wormhole. So stick with me, and I'll help you sort the real facts from a lot of the Dominion propaganda that you'll find online. And this is another special interview episode. This week, I am talking to David Stephan from the Star Trek 1/6 scale action figure company, EXO-6. David and I have a wide-ranging conversation about 1/6 scale Star Trek action figures, what the company has coming up over the course of the next year, and quite how difficult it is to produce action figures of this scale and quality. As anybody who's listened to this show knows, I am a huge fan of the EXO-6 1/6 action figures, and I hope you will enjoy my interview with David Stephan.
So, are we all ready?
Oh, are you doing an interview as well, Shaban?
Well, David, thank you for taking the time to do this. I'll admit up front, I'm not an unbiased interviewer when it comes to EXO-6, because as I indicated to you by email, I own everything you've made, and I've pre-ordered everything you haven't made yet. So,
well, that's good to hear. I'm glad of that.
So you have a friendly interviewer in this case. As listeners of my show will know, every time we talk about a new EXO-6 announcement, I will say, eventually I have to stop. But so far, you haven't managed to push me over the edge into knots. So, but before I'm sure we will get into talking about a ton of specificity about what you're working on, what's coming up, what are some of the exciting releases on the way. But I wonder if we could take a step back first. I would love to just 1/6 action figures, not something I collected before EXO-6, not something that had ever sort of entered my world of consideration. For folks who maybe don't have one of these action figures yet, I'm not quite sure, well, why would I want that? What is it about 1/6 action figures to you that's appealing?
Well, I've been a collector for many, many years. Even as a child, I started with the, G.I. Joes. So I've been into the 1/6 for a long time. And back in, I think it was actually the Playmates 9-inch figures that got me back into it, at the start of the century, really. I guess it's 20 years ago now. But I hadn't been really into collectibles or toys or anything like that for a long time. And it was Playmates that actually got me more interested in the figures with fabric costumes, which is the height of what 1/6 is all about, really. And I started as a forum on the internet with Sideshow Freaks, which was all about 1/6 at one point. And I've since moved on from that. But, that's how I met Nanjin and how I got interested in actually making it my career, because before I was in entertainment, I was a TV producer. I wasn't doing this kind of thing. So,
and what's your sort of Star Trek origin story? How'd you become a fan? Why this was something you decided to not just kind of be a fan of and collect, but be part of the business side of things?
Well, my very first memory of Star Trek is my brothers watching a rerun of Cat's Paw, and me being absolutely terrified by it as probably a 3-year-old, I think.
Yep, those little pipe cleaner aliens really creep me out every time.
So I've started watching Star Trek in reruns, and then when TNG came on, I started watching that, and just have really been not a super fan, but at least a casual fan. And then I've always been interested in the 1/6. I bought some of the Playmates when they came out. So that was something that really got me back into Star Trek, because Nanjin is a super fan.
Yep. And
he likes 1/6, and he kind of brought Star Trek into that area really in a big way. And once we had teamed up early on, we were going to do our own 1/6 company, he and I together. And we got our own licenses even. And then the QMX thing happened, and they happened to have Star Trek, which was what Nanjin's goal all along was to actually do 1/6 Star Trek license. So that kind of was a very serendipitous occurrence for us.
Yeah.
You know.
So talk to me a little bit more about kind of picking up on that thread about the origin of the company. So the first 1/6 Star Trek releases that were done by you guys were actually at QMX, right? You did
Correct.
a range of TOS, Captain Picard, and then everything goes quiet for a year or two, and then EXO-6 smashes onto the scene, and now you've made what, 12 more at this point that you've shipped, and then another like 7 or 8 that are in like pre-order stage. I only know this because I like counted them on the last episode.
It's like 14 or 15.
Yeah.
We've done 9 and 22.
Yeah.
And then we had about 5 and 21, I think, 4 or 5.
Yep.
So yeah, and then I don't even want to say what's coming in 23.
All right, okay, let me see it. So let me try and get you. So 23, more than 10?
Yeah.
More than 20?
Yeah, probably.
More than 30?
If everything goes to plan.
Well, that is very exciting. All right, so tell me. So you guys, so you meet Nanjin, you get set up with QMX, you're pushing out some figures, very well received, still going on eBay for high prices on the secondary market. TOS Captain's Chair, which is fabulous. I've got in the other room. My mirror Spock's currently sitting in him. And then you decide we're off to do EXO-6. Talk a little bit about that decision and that process and like how you got there.
Decided they really weren't wanting to be in the 1/6 business.
Yep.
So we left there, and then we set out during the pandemic really to get the license for ourselves from Paramount. And given our track record with QMX and kind of Paramount, well, it was CBS at the time that became CBS Viacom and is now Paramount, was familiar with our work and was familiar with us, and so didn't have a problem really going with us for the license. And we made it worthwhile for them, so that took off, and we just started planning and sculpting and hiring sculptors around the world and getting things ready. So it became kind of a full-time job for both of us to just try and get these done.
And how long does it take? Like, you guys shipped the motion picture Admiral Kirk and motion picture Spock. Congratulations, by the way, both sold out within like a matter of hours of being placed up on the website. Like what is the sort of true time it takes from the inception of when you guys go, let's do motion picture Kirk and Spock, to the moment you ship it out the door? Is that, I assume it's not weeks. I assume it's definitely at least months, maybe it's years, but I'd love to know more about like what that timeline and process looks like.
It's completely different for each figure, really.
Yeah.
If you look at our product numbers, 7 of 9 is our first product number.
Right.
That was the first figure that we started developing. Her and First Contact, Picard and Data, were the first ones kind of out the door. And we still haven't shipped 7 of 9.
Yep.
We wanted to develop a body for her that was specific to the actor and that we could also adapt for other female characters, because if you don't know that much about 1/6, the female bodies that are available that you can just buy off the shelf from manufacturers are not a wide selection.
Yeah.
So we wanted to make sure we were able to do justice to the actors. And so that's what's taken so long with her. And some of our early figures, well, actually all of the EXO-6 figures, use our own proprietary bodies, even the males. So, but we had developed the male body much earlier, back when in QMX times.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So, to answer your question, she's taken since 2020. She's taken 4 years
to
come out. But something like, well, I'll use an example, Harry Kim.
Yep.
Which is probably going to be one of our next figures from Voyager. He'll come out probably in the spring, and we just started developing him this year, so maybe 9 months.
Yeah.
Is the fastest anything's ever developed and comes out. Things like Kirk and Spock, we've been developing since the very beginning also.
Yeah.
Whether it's the movie versions or the series versions, we're always working on some version of Kirk and Spock.
And so to like, I assume then that comes down to the complexity of whoever it is you're trying to create, in the sense that whether that's costume, sculpting, like I would imagine, and tell me if I'm wrong, but like as you start getting into doing more of the aliens, right? You did Saru this past year, Quark is up for pre-order, Krug is right around the corner. Are those more complicated? Are those less complicated? And then like some of the costumes also seem like they're really elaborate as well. And I know you guys are like really trying to go for as much kind of screen accurate authenticity as possible for these things.
Yeah, actually, the aliens are easier.
Okay.
In the sculpts, anyway. For the costumes, yes, they're more difficult, especially someone like Krug.
Right.
I mean, that Klingon costume is incredibly complicated. Or getting the patterns created and right on Quark, or Neelix, or someone like that. That makes it more complicated. But from the sculpt point of view, getting approvals and things like that from the studio are easier for aliens.
Yeah.
And the sculpts can be faster too, because trying to get the likeness on a human is more difficult than replicating something that was already sculpted, like a makeup for an alien.
And what goes into trying to get the likeness right? I mean, especially for some of those like super iconic characters, where some of whom are really hard to capture, right? Like, I think, in some ways, William Shatner has been the bane of all kinds of licensees trying to create all kinds of likenesses for him since 1966, right? Like, there's just something about his face which is it just seems to be really difficult to capture really authentically. I will say, and I'm not just blowing smoke up your ass because I'm a huge fan, but like the motion picture Kirk, like, is probably one of the closest likenesses I've seen to actually William Shatner in any of his various kind of appearances throughout Star Trek. What goes into sort of, what are some of the challenges associated with getting that right?
Well, you're right. William Shatner is one of the toughest likenesses that is ever been thought of in all of sculpting in 1/6 or collectibles of any kind. And Shatner gets approval too on his things. Not all the actors do, but he's one of the ones that does.
Yeah.
But he's been actually very, very good. We've gotten maybe 1 or 2 notes from him, total, on all the Shatner portraits, and we've had a lot of them. And Shatner's one where you can look at 2 sculpts and they both look, well, that's William Shatner, but they don't look anything like each other.
Yeah, right.
So that happens. So it's a matter of just going back and forth with the artist, getting it right, getting the right reference, getting enough pictures so that they can get a full picture of what he looks like, what the different expressions might be, or the specific expression. Like the motion picture, we were going for some very specific moment. Nanjin really wanted to capture, the moment when he saw the Enterprise for the first time.
Yeah.
Which there was a good shot in the movie from that. So. And I think we did a pretty good job on capturing that. And we're going to do less specific moments on things, but, like our mirror, Sulu has a very specific expression.
Yep.
And sometimes those can be tougher, or sometimes it's easier for the sculptor to have something really specific that they can hang a likeness on too.
Yeah.
That's something they want to match exactly rather than just doing a generic, stoic expression. And I will say, though, the classic actors, that's the process. For the new Trek, though, we can sometimes get scans from the studios,
cool. Yeah.
For visual effects, and we can adapt those. Like Saru was a scan. And for Strange New Worlds, I think the artist started with scans, but then he went kind of off on his own direction with those too.
Yep.
And I'm very eager for people to see the Strange New World stuff when it comes out.
I'm very eager to learn there's Strange New World stuff coming. So you guys are that's one of the new shows that you guys are doing figures for?
Yeah, we want to try and touch base, at least do 1 or 2 characters from all the new Treks. Discovery may not have been that popular, but we wanted to really pay service to the new shows.
Yeah.
And we really enjoy the props and things are so much more detailed and elaborate on the new stuff than it was on the old shows too. So it was fun doing those. They're more expensive than anything else we've done, like Saru and Michael's props, but it was something that was we were eager to see anyway.
And how do you, because I love, like, obviously I love the figures, but I also like those accessories are amazing, right? And some of the care and thought that goes into which to pair up with the character, right? Captain Archer has Porthos coming, and Janeway has a coffee cup, and Cisco has a baseball, and how do you sit down and think about what to include with each of the characters on the accessory side?
Well, we don't want to just throw things in because they need accessories. Because, for example, the motion picture stuff, we didn't really put anything.
Yeah.
Because Nanjan's very big about, well, we didn't see him on screen with it, so he can't have it. You know, like Spock in a tricorder or something, or Kirk with a phaser. In that uniform, he never used one. So, or didn't use one, I think, the whole movie. But we look at what's essential, like what absolutely has to be there, like a communicator and a phaser, for a standard release. And then we go in, well, what else would be fun to have? And also the price point on the figure. If it's something like a data from the next generation, we can put a little more stuff there because we're going to be able to charge a little more, and it's going to sell much wider than something like Saru and Michael would say. So data will probably have Spot, his cat, like we did Porthos for
that's cool. I love that.
So we try to think of what's the best thing, but what makes sense. We don't want to put in something that's going to increase the price by $20 either.
Sure, right.
So it just has to make sense economically and for the character, and it has to be something that we can produce and look exactly right too. So.
And in terms of the decision about which characters to release and the sort of order in which they've been released, I mean, partially it sounds like that just comes down to like the time it takes to produce them, and given that's so variable for each kind of character, it just kind of happens when it happens. I wonder if you could talk a little bit about, like, EXO-6 has sort of used a non-traditional, I would say, for Star Trek licensee method of like choosing characters to release, right? Most licensees, when they come in, they, like take Playmates, for example, back in doing the, the sort of smaller action figures, they came in and their first characters out of the gate were Kirk and Spock and Picard. You guys, when you were at QMX, your first characters out of the gate were Kirk, Spock, and McCoy. Most everybody goes to Kirk, Spock, and McCoy. You guys were First Contact Data was number one, followed by First Contact Picard, followed by Janeway. We're now, I think, 4 figures into Voyager. But aside from the 2 mirror releases, don't have any of the sort of TOS era characters, don't have any series era TNG characters outside of Judge Q. But we've got 2 Discoveries and we've got 1 Deep Space Nine, and there are 2 Enterprise on the way. And like, those are the shows that normally don't get a lot of love from folks. So I'm curious, like, how you guys have kind of approached thinking about that.
Well, from very early on, we had planned to be very wide and broad in what characters we release. And also for TOS, we wanted to distance ourselves from the QMX. If we came out right away with those, it's been too soon for the QMX characters coming out. So we will be doing TOS, and we're going to be pretty deep on it. And most of them have already been sculpted and have gone through approvals or are in approvals right now. So people don't need to worry about that. But I mean, we are very different in 1/6 that we own our own factory, or we control the means of production. So we have to keep that going. So we go into production on things as soon as we can, so that we can keep the factory working. Because we can't let it stand idle. So if Shran is ready, we'll go with him rather than TNG Picard or Data or something like that. And that's just kind of how it's been working that way. Or if something takes longer to develop, like a Krug, where we have to spend more time on the costume, and we've gone back to the sculpt a few times too. So it's just a matter of what's ready when. Nanjin has a very specific idea of wanting to do entire crews. Like Voyager will pretty much be complete. Enterprise maybe not, but most things will. anyone you would think you would want, you'll probably get.
Yeah.
On any of the bigger shows, of the more popular shows, or in the Wrath of Khan movie, that kind of thing. So
Yep.
I think we've teased Savick already. So that's something that people probably wouldn't have thought would be coming from us. You think you do the big three and that would be it,
Right.
So we try and keep people guessing, I guess, but we don't want to do something that's not going to sell either.
Right.
We're not going to make a figure that's only going to sell 50 to the diehard fans.
Sure.
I see some of the requests I see online have kind of been like, okay, I don't even know who that is. And I'm a pretty big fan.
Yeah.
So yeah. So it's just a matter of what's ready when, and getting them out there and trying to make sense and not overwhelm people. I think 23 we're going to overwhelm you a little bit, but in a good way.
Yeah. Okay, well then let's turn our eyes to 2023. And we've already kind of established that you guys have big plans, right? More than 20, probably more than 30 if everything goes according to plan. I wonder if you could just talk a little bit. You guys had a ton of prototypes to show at Mission Chicago last April, a lot of which have since come out, but many of which still haven't. I'm curious, what do we have to look forward to next year?
Well, the big wave is going to be the Wrath of Khan. I mean, that's the one that we're most proud of. And it's taken really this long to get there because, as you know, the costumes are incredibly complicated. So we had to make sure that the factory workers were ready to do those costumes and do them well. And of course, Nanjin's all about, the color, making sure we get the right material or get the right dye, that kind of thing. So yeah, that's going to be big this year is the Wrath of Khan. And I think we've already established that. I think one thing we showed in Chicago was the cage. We had a few figures from there.
Yep.
Those will probably be coming before other original series figures.
That feels appropriate.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess. But it's not something you would think.
Yeah, right.
Like, you do a normal Kirkensbach first. But
yes.
But we're very proud of what we've got for the cage. And I think Strange New Worlds has kind of upped the excitement for Pike a little bit, even the older versions.
For sure.
I think that's going to be fun to see how people react to those. So, and then there's things that we're going to do. I don't want to say what it is, but like we may go back to First Contact and do something. We have a character on the boards that I think people are like, well, I never expected that, but wow, I really want that.
Sure. Yep.
So, and
I think you guys had potentially teased way back when Data came out, you put out the First Contact poster that was Data, Picard, and the Borg Queen. Is the Borg Queen still something that you guys are thinking about?
Well, the Borg Queen, we've always intended to be a statue.
A statue, okay, yeah.
Whether it's polyresin or whether it's PVC. Because we wanted to do her justice, and she's not really a dynamic character. She's not swinging through the air on spiderwebs,
Yeah, right.
So does she really need to be that mobile? She'll be in scale with the figures, and you'll be able to display her with the figures, but she's going to be a static statue. But getting her right, and for a statue, we wanted to do an environment, really.
Yeah.
So what is the space she occupies? Because in the movie, it's kind of, she's just there in front of a table, with not much going on. So we want to make the environment exactly right for her. So yeah, she's still coming, but there might be other First Contact that you wouldn't expect too.
That's very exciting. Is there so a Borg Queen planned to be a statue? Is that something that you guys are thinking about as a one-off? We want to do the Borg Queen and a statue makes the most sense, or is it possible that we could anticipate more similar type products as well?
Yeah, no, we plan on doing more statues. It's just a matter of what is the subject matter.
Right.
Does it make sense as a statue? For example, some of the more complicated aliens, it might make more sense to be a statue rather than a figure.
Yep.
Especially if it requires a whole new type of body. So like maybe species 4872 would be better as a statue, know. And there's other things too that, well, this doesn't necessarily work as a figure. It doesn't look right, but it would be a really cool statue in this specific pose. So we're looking at all of that. we really want to do that kind of thing, and we're going to probably do more environmental stuff like the chair.
Yes.
The captain's chair. We're doing a captain's chair for First Contact, which is coming out pretty soon. And Nanjin has teased the captain's chairs for TMP and Wrath of Khan too. So that kind of thing, and probably more bridge stations too, at least for TOS and TNG.
That's really cool because I personally love that. I mean, when I got the TOS captain's chair in and I sat Mirror Spock in it, I was like, this is great, right? It elevates the figure and the display of it in just this really interesting way. So I'm really excited to hear that because and I obviously am super, I ordered the Enterprise E captain's chair and I'm super thrilled to get it. Do you think there's a world in which we might see like more captain's chairs beyond the ones that have already been teased?
Yes. Yeah. Very, very likely. Some of them are less interesting than others.
Yeah.
But, we may be like, is Janeway's chair really that thrilling? But certainly Pike from Strange New World has an interesting chair.
Yep.
And there's a few others, movie chairs and things like that, and other bridge elements too that might be coming. So yeah, it's something we're very, very interested in doing.
That's super cool. Okay, so Wrath of Khan, Cage. Sounds like more Voyager. You said Harry Kim's,
more Voyager.
Done.
Like I said, we're probably going to finish Voyager pretty quickly off.
Yeah.
In 2023.
Anything else on the way?
Oh, well, yeah. There's lots of DS9. TNG is going to definitely get started in 23.
Yep.
And carry over. TOS. We'll have probably a couple figures from TOS in 23. More movie stuff. So yeah, there's lots of stuff coming. Yeah, I think we've got over 74 numbers on our product count. So there's a lot to do.
And so you guys do 1/6 action figures. You're talking about doing their statues are in development, certainly starting with the Borg Queen, maybe some more in development too. Are you guys also thinking about other kinds of products? I mean, you certainly have established some bona fides I'll just say, as somebody who's a big collector of Star Trek merchandise generally, my experience for a lot of them, especially the high-end stuff, is I pay a bunch of money and years pass and then the company folds and I never get my money back. Versus you guys who have put out a bunch of product over the last couple of years and really seem like you're moving and shaking. Is that because you guys are like, we have our thing, we know it really well, and we're just going to keep doing our thing? Or are you guys looking at other sort of products, other types of collectibles within the Star Trek universe that you might want to kind of move into as well?
We definitely want to do other types of product for Star Trek. We are looking at doing a smaller kind of just a static statue, but maybe not your typical Star Trek characters. QMX did like a Locutus and a 7 of 9,
yes.
I think.
Yep.
In a 6-inch or 7-inch format, something like that, but for maybe a different iteration of Star Trek, something that lends itself more to animation style.
Interesting. Well, that is a tease if ever I heard one. That's very cool. I like that a lot because I'm a huge fan of the animated TV shows. All right, I'm not going to ask you to talk about anything that hasn't already been teased or previewed or released, but if you could only take 3, and I'm being generous because I should have just picked 1, but if you could only take 3 of the EXO-6 Star Trek figures to a desert island, which would you pick?
That's actually not a hard question.
Okay.
I think Krug is going to be one of the premier, not just EXO-6 figures, but a premier 1/6 figure that anyone's ever seen. The Emperor is going to be from Discovery. Is going to be an amazing looking figure with a lot of variations, to her. So, and then the other one's going to be one we haven't teased yet. So I'm not going to say. I'll just say I'm a big spacesuit guy. I really love spacesuits. So.
Interesting. I wonder if there's another part of this interview that we could connect together to put two dots to.
Yeah, I think you've done it already. So.
Yeah. Very interesting. Okay.
Let me ask you,
Yes.
of all the Star Trek characters, who do you want to see most as a one EXO-6 figure?
Ooh, that you guys haven't done yet?
That we haven't done yet, or we haven't teased yet.
That you haven't teased yet.
Or not necessarily a character, it could be like an environment.
Yeah. So I would really like the TNG captain's chair. I love like just the Enterprise D sort of beige Marriott in space aesthetic just calms me in a way that I cannot even begin to describe. And so yeah, I would love like TNG captain's chair. Oh, you know what I would actually love? And this is like wild, but in the sort of diorama space, because like I talked about how I like to display them and it's nice to have the sort of like pieces. I would really like a door that you could put the figure in front of, whether that's like a turbo lift entrance or like just something that's kind of got a background to it that is a little more like you guys have when you put the Enterprise E captain's chair up for pre-order, you talked about doing the kind of the flat backgrounds to kind of give you something. But I would love one that's 3D and like dynamic, so that those sort of like background things that you could the bridge pieces, like ways that you can put the figures either in front of something or sitting on something that kind of goes together. And I have a bunch of ideas in that space.
Well, that's something actually Nanjin has teased, is the holodeck door.
Yes, like I would love that. TNG. Like that would be perfect. You put 3 TNG like figures in front of that as though they're walking into the holodeck. Like right. That'd be terrific.
Yeah, it's huge though, and we're trying to figure out if there's a way to do it economically. And
right,
how many are we really going to sell of that? How many people like you are going to want to have that kind of display? So
yeah, I doubt just going off of me saying that I want it is enough for you guys to actually do it.
But no, it's something he wants to do. Obviously, we prototyped it, so yeah, it's a possibility. Let me ask you about the Enterprise D captain's chair, though.
Yes.
Do you have to have the counselor's chair and the number 1 chair as well?
I mean, if they were available, I would buy them.
Right, but I mean, is it necessary for the display?
I don't think so. You know what feels like if anything were necessary, and I don't necessarily think this is necessary, but if you could just have like a bit of beige plastic behind it that sort of like hinted at the tactical console, right? Because it's right up back against it.
Mm-hmm.
Like that would potentially be the only thing where I would be like, maybe that would be something that would be like cool to add to it. But no, I think that one I think could sit alone. And like obviously the TOS one, right? Like that's, you walk 360 degrees around that one. The Enterprise E1, same thing. But I guess that's sort of like a little bit what you were talking about with the Janeway captain's chair, right? Because it's sort of built into the whole kind of thing. If you just do it by itself, it is not the most interesting chair in the world.
Right.
So maybe there's another Voyager bridge piece or something that like, those characters could kind of all hang around. But yeah, the TNG chair, I think the TNG chair is interesting enough with the headrest and the sort of swooping arm rests. And yeah. That's my plug for that one.
Good to know.
David, anything we haven't talked about in this interview that you want to cover?
I think you guys have you've covered pretty much what we have wanted to talk about. I think people just should get really excited for 2023 and, start saving.
Yeah, now. Right.
Really, you need to start saving, because we don't want to compromise on figures. So if something has to be more expensive, we're not going to dumb it down to make it cheaper. We're going to have to release it that way. And our margins are not the highest in the world. I mean, you look at other 1/6 figures that are pushing $500 now.
Yeah, right.
And we don't want to go there, but we're not going to make the inferior product either.
Yeah.
So we just want to let people know that they need to start putting that money away. And if whatever fandom you are, there's probably going to be something for you. Whether it's the new Trek, whether it's the old Trek, Whatever iteration it is, there's going to be something for you. And also, if it's, Picard, Discovery, Strange New World, Lower Decks, whatever, Prodigy is the only thing we can't really do.
Yeah.
So, because they want that's kind of, they're aiming towards kids, not collectors yet.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
So pretty much we're going to cover the gamut.
Well, David, I just want to say thank you. I mean, from the perspective of all of the work that you and Nanjin and the rest of the team have done over the last couple of years, it's been really impressive. As I say, the track record of high-end collectibles in the Star Trek license business is a very mixed one. And you guys are one of the huge success stories so far in terms of saying you're going to do something, doing it, and hitting it out of the park, and doing it in a way that I think nobody sort of anticipated or expected. The depth of characters that you were going to do, the variety, the speed at which you put them out, right? I ordered Motion Picture Spock, and he was sitting on my doorstep 2.5 weeks later. It has been really impressive. And so thank you for everything that you're doing. And if there's anything we can do to help support that going forward, do not hesitate to ask, because I'm a huge fan.
Well, we definitely will be reaching out. I mean, TrekCore has been a great source of publicizing our things. And I'm sure as a partner of them that you will help us out as well, too, in the future. One thing I did want to mention about
please,
your Spock getting there so quickly. We have an interesting way of producing things. Sometimes we'll say, okay, this is how many we're going to make. We make them, then we sell them. Our normal model is to solicit something, pre-order it, and then we make it to the number of orders that we get, and then we ship it. So most of the time, you're not going to have to worry about something selling out immediately. It's because it's a pre-order. We haven't started production yet. Kirk and Spock were one of those things where we wanted to do TMP, but we didn't want to cannibalize what we're coming up with Wrath of Khan, because we figured, people might not buy Wrath of Khan if they have TMP available. So we wanted to make it limited so we could do the characters and just get it out there. So, but I did want to just iterate that it's not our normal model, and we're not going to be doing that. But we're still a lot faster than most 1/6.
Oh yes.
Hot Toys will take 2 years to deliver something that they solicit.
Yeah.
Ours will be 6 months usually at the most. So 6 to 8 months. So yeah, it's still much better than normal. It's just not going to be as instantaneous as Kirk and Spock were.
And given how many products you guys have out, you are fulfilling things at a fast rate, just in terms of, it feels like over the last 4 or 5 months, you've never not been fulfilling one of the figures that, yes, it might have been put up for pre-order 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 months before, but it's all coming. It's not like there's anything that you guys haven't followed through on yet.
Yeah, it's only things like 7, which were, took a little more development time than we had thought, and production, that is coming out after we said it would. The chair maybe a little bit after, but not that much. It's not a delay of 18 months like you might get somewhere else. So yeah, we try and over promise, but then we also over deliver. So
sure. Yep.
Yeah.
Well, David, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Good luck and Godspeed. Happy New Year. And maybe we'll do this again in 2024, and you can tell me how many figures you got on the way for next year.
And you can tell me how broke you are from all
right. I will definitely do that.
Okay.
Thank you, David. I appreciate it.
All
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.